Picture it. You're out to eat, and the smell of loaded potato skins is strong. The walls are adorned with an attic's worth of knick-knacks. The waitstaff is cheery in their white and red striped uniforms. And you're mesmerized by the tricks the bartender is performing in the background. Because in here, it's always Friday night. TGI Fridays has long been known as the quirky family eatery that gave rise to the art of flair in everything from the decor to the drinks to the staff's bedazzled uniforms. But all of a sudden, we seemingly outgrew Friday's unique brand of fun, leaving the once prominent chain wishing it was still the weekend. So, what happened? Well, today we're putting on our best pieces of flair to serve up the overnight rise and Monday morning fall of TGI Fridays. But before we put this order up, make sure to subscribe to the Weird History Food channel. Then let us know in the comments what other famous food franchises of yesteryear you want to feast on. Okay, do those potato skins come with a side of step-by-step? In the mid-1960s, young people who wanted to mingle and get tipsy were not hanging out at their local bars or clubs, but rather hosting cocktail parties in their own homes.
Whip up a fun Polynesian punch. 1 part maraschino cherries, 1 part fresh orange juice, and a dash of gin.
Prohibition only ran from 1920 to 1933, but the effects of being forced to do your own boozing on the down low were felt for decades after, resulting in bar crawls falling out of fashion. When the bar shut down, socialized drinking culture all but went with it. And not just because the best drink you could hope to get was moonshine made in someone's damp root cellar. Despite living on Manhattan's East Side, which boasted nearly 800,000 single people living between 30th and 90th Streets, salesman Alan Stillman wasn't having much luck with the ladies. He recognized the lack of proper drinking spots for young singles, as well as the lack of exciting, unique cocktails, and set out to fix both issues. Despite having absolutely no knowledge on how to run a restaurant or bar, Stillman got to work. He purchased his old drinking spot, the Good Tavern, painted the building blue, and decked out the inside with several ferns and Tiffany-style lamps throughout, going against the usual dark and dingy vibe in dive bars of the era. This would earn them and their imitators the nickname Fern Bars. TGI Fridays opened up their doors on March 15, 1965 at the corner of 1st and 63rd, and was almost an immediate hit. The name was derived from the old adage, "Thank God it's Friday," with the bar boasting, "In here, it's always Friday." At Stillman's command, the menu offered well-prepared burgers and fries, plus some other basic bar foods. But it was the drinks where TGI Friday's star shined brightest. Prohibition moonshine had left a bad taste in people's mouths, both figuratively and literally. But Stillman wanted to change that perception. He introduced fruity, sugary drinks with names like Pink Slippers and Harvey Wallbanger, as well as other tiki-themed cocktails. And his patrons drank it up. TGI Fridays proved so popular in its first few years, there were often lines stretching around the block to get in, forcing Stillman to hire a doorman. Yes, TGI Fridays had a doorman. Imitators began to pop up nearby, resulting in police closing down the street 1st Avenue between 63rd and 64th Streets on Friday nights, from 8 p.m. until midnight to accommodate the massive crowd. A large part of TGI Friday's success, and the piece of business that set them apart from everyone else in the game at the time, was their intense focus on the art of the cocktail, something that had been lost after Prohibition and 2 back-to-back world wars. Anyone with hands can mix 2 liquids together, but at TGIFs, they weren't TGIFing around. At one point, tenders of the bar were expected to learn how to make a variety of over 400 drinks, down to the specific ounces. But that was only if you made the cut. When TGI Fridays became popular, bartenders started making serious cash, sometimes pulling in $300 to $500 in tips every night, an equivalent to around 2,000 smackaroos in today's money. That made bartending a pretty coveted position. If you wanted to sling cocktails, you had to bar back for at least 9 months and pass rigorous tests before stepping up to the big leagues. Might be easier to go for a doctorate. There's debate as to whether TGI Fridays was truly the first singles bar, but there is no doubt they were the most popular. Their original location literally stopped traffic, leading to the opening of more locations to satisfy the ever-growing clientele. Thanks to Stillman's successful sanctuary for the singles of New York, more people wanted in on the action. Copycat bars began popping up across the nation, prompting Stillman to partner with fellow Bucknell graduate Bob Benson to open additional TGI Fridays franchises in new cities. As TGI Fridays' reach expanded, so did their offerings, both in food and drink as well as aesthetic. Copycat restaurants like Chili's, Ruby Tuesdays, and Applebee's all shared the similar decor choice of a bunch of random knickknacks on the wall. But it was TGI Fridays that had the idea first. Each location has a minimum of one propeller and one rowing skull on display, as well as a mixture of thrifted trinkets and specially made items. They have enough of it to store in a 25,000 square foot warehouse in Nashville, Tennessee. And anyone born before 1990 is probably familiar with TGI Fridays' obsession with flair. Employees were encouraged to add as much personality as legally possible to their red and white striped uniforms.
If you want me to wear 37 pieces of flair like your pretty boy over there, Brian, why don't you just make the minimum 37 pieces of flair?
The only thing more robust than the decor was the menu. Aside from their famous potato skins, which they may be invented and may be borrowed, depending on who you ask, Fridays offered exciting foods you couldn't get at most bar restaurants. As time went on and the party-going crowd of the 60s and 70s were now bringing their families, Fridays was able to adapt, becoming one of the first major restaurants to offer a kids menu and non-alcoholic mocktails. They were the first non-Mexican restaurant to offer avocado and Mexican appetizers. TGI Fridays headed into the 1980s under new management after Alan Stillman sold his share of the company to his business partners and a group called the Carlson Company. The change in ownership saw a large but effective vibe shift from a singles-only haunt to a family-fun eatery. Their famously adept drink-mixing team had evolved into full-on bartending sorcery. Flair bartending became all the rage, with tenders able to juggle bottles, pour behind their backs, and perform feats of liquid magic. The 1988 Tom Cruise film Cocktail is loosely based on the bartenders on the Upper East Side at the time. So if you're a fan of Cocktail, you have TGI Fridays to thank for it. Eventually, bartending contests at TGI Fridays would evolve into an annual World Bartender Championship, and even a request to add it as an Olympic sport. The 80s boom also saw TGI Fridays expand further across the planet, with locations throughout the UK becoming some of the chain's most successful. By the 1990s, every state of the US had at least one TGI Fridays, and its reach had spread across the globe, but it was virtually unrecognizable from the hip singles joint it had been in the 60s. It was now a place for family-friendly casual dining. At their peak, TGI Fridays boasted over 600 stores around the world, and almost as many imitators, including Applebee's, Maxwell's Plum, and Bennigan's. Poor Bennigan's. They began toning down their style around 2005, dropping the striped uniforms, suspenders, and buttons. A style change in the 2000s saw the removal of the apostrophe from the word Fridays, and the brand branched out, selling some of their famous menu items like potato skins and mozzarella sticks in grocery stores. Now it can be Friday every day in your freezer. In 2008, restaurateur Guy Fieri partnered with Fridays to offer custom dishes all the way from Flavortown. The high-energy, spiky-haired foodie provided tasty options, like the Chipotle grilled steak sandwich and gourmet mac and 5 cheese. Now that's money. But no matter how many kitchen gangsters they threw at their menu, Friday's steady decline had already begun by the early 2010s. For a restaurant themed around family-friendly irreverence, TGI Fridays was not without its controversies. 2018 saw strikes from many of the workers at UK locations over a new pay policy that redistributed customer tips from the waiters to the kitchen staff, a move that cost servers hundreds of pounds every month. Employees went on strike again after Friday's UK staff were given a portion of the front house service charge payments instead of a raise. Things haven't been all weekend fun on our side of the pond either. In 2014, TGI Fridays locations offered mistletoe drone service to its clientele. The idea was to fly mistletoe over the heads of customers and snap a shot of their kiss for the digital sign out front. But they were forced to stop the service when a drone crashed into a woman's face, which was probably not the Friday night vibe they were going for. Fridays was forced to pay a $19.1 million settlement in New York in 2017 for failing to pay minimum wage or overtime, as well as mishandling tips. Roughly 28,000 employees were included in the settlement. And across the state line in New Jersey, police officers busted 29 TGI Fridays locations during a sting operation called Operation Swift. The restaurants involved had been swapping out premium alcohol for the cheap stuff, and in some cases, offering rubbing alcohol instead of scotch. And that rubbing alcohol wasn't even a good year. This bold stunt would see the whole TGI Fridays brand sold off to Sentinel Partners just a month later. TGI Fridays was on a bumpy road as the aughts rolled on. The singles bar turned casual restaurant chain was hit hard during the 2008 financial crisis, resulting in more than 200 stores closing over the next 10 years. As the sales declined, so did the quality of food and service, with pre-made food replacing the freshly cooked grub Fridays was known for. Gone were the days of Tom Cruise spinning a bottle on his pinky finger behind the bar. The closure of many shopping malls meant adjacent Fridays lost a lot of foot traffic at their most popular locations. The rise of food delivery and faster options like Panera and Chipotle meant nobody was going to the restaurant with the busy wall decorations anymore. By 2017, TGI Fridays was looking at a 5.1% decline in sales and has struggled with growth ever since, closing 74 stores during the pandemic alone. The company ended up filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in November of 2024, with almost all remaining restaurants affected. Several locations were immediately closed down, while the brand goes through a restructuring initiative behind the scenes. Time will tell if TGI Fridays is able to recover from the slump and get back on top again. Maybe they should try moving it to Saturday. So what do you think? Were you a fan of TGI Fridays? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of these other weird history food videos.